Now to this report outlining the cost of presidential candidate Bernie Sanders' ideas on increasing government spending and higher taxes on the rich. The total cost of his proposals to American taxpayers, $18 trillion over 10 years. David Webb, host of the David Webb radio show on SiriusXM's Patriot Channel and columnist for The Hill and a Fox News contributor. Jessa Ehrlich is an attorney and former Democratic congressional candidate. Good day to both of you. 18 trillion's kind of familiar, isn't it, guy? I mean, 18 trillion. Oh, that's right. That's the size of our debt as well. Wow. Does this have a chance of seeing the light of day in your lifetime, David Webb?
No, it doesn't, Bill. You're right. It does happen to match our current debt that we have a problem paying off. But let's take Bernie Sanders for what he is, who's been living off people's taxes to pay his salary since 1981. I have a more fundamental question, though, and his proposal won't see the light of day, but to the parents of those budding young socialists in college who support Bernie and show up by the tens of thousands all over the country to see him, to the parents, how did you earn that money? What socialism lets you earn that money and save it so you can pay for your young budding socialist education? It didn't. We look at Venezuela, Greece, the European Union, social democracies. By the way, the richest person in Venezuela, $4.2 billion, Maria Gabriela Chavez, Hugo Chavez's daughter, while others live in squalor with little or no food or health care or access to it. Socialism and Bernie Sanders are a farce, and the danger is that he will pollute these young minds.
But it is true, the folks who are coming to his rallies, I mean, they really love to hear his message. Now, this is what O'Reilly had to say about it last night. Listen to this.
The Sanders surge is built around his belief that every American should receive free health care, free education through college, a guaranteed job and salary, subsidized housing and child care if you're poor, and guaranteed retirement income. Bernie's mantra is pretty much cradle-to-grave entitlements. And don't worry, if you don't want to work, Bernie will take care of you anyway. And those who are working will pay for it.
So Jessica, you're a centrist, right? I mean, do you like this idea?
Well, I think there's a lot of popularity in various things. I mean, he's talking about the same policies he's been talking about since he's held office. And yes, he's a socialist, so no, being a Democrat does not mean that you are a socialist. But certain things he says really appeal to people because we've been seeing this populist movement on the left and the right in both parties, where it's sort of like what Trump's, immigration plan is. They're outrageously expensive. The likelihood of them actually passing through the House and the Senate are almost nil. But they appeal to people who've been through some of the worst economic times that we've seen, certainly in the last century.
So he's just sucking up then? Is that what you're saying?
No, I mean, these are things that he really believes. I mean, I think we saw that,
In your lifetime, will this ever happen?
I find it hard to believe, but I would like to think that we would be able to do some changes in terms of making Social Security stronger, in terms of expanding Medicare, in terms of really being able to help people, expanding people's access to education. That is what he's talking about specifically, but he's doing it in a way, we all argue about the way to get there, the way that we make Social Security secure again, the way that we deal with Medicare, the way that we deal with universal health care. But these are things that appeal to people living in this country who are working, who are struggling. I mean, having universal health care for
Jessica, a very small group. Look, Social Security, one of the great scams in Social Security is that LBJ moved it into the general fund so he could hide his big spending. You go to FDR, who had the largest congressional majority in our nation's history, couldn't get his progressive left-wing socialist policies through. We've got to be realistic to the folks, Jessica, and let's be honest. How do you pay for this? How do you refill the wealth coffer?
Before we get into a conversation about FDR and LBJ.
Right, but right now you can't pay for it. I mean, the books don't balance. But listen, to both of you, why is he tied or leading Hillary Clinton with ideas like this?
Because,
Jessica,
Bill,
first. Hang on one second, Dave. Jessica.
Yeah, well, we've seen it only right now in certain states. I mean, it still is incredibly unlikely that Bernie Sanders will be the Democratic nominee for president.
States, though.
But it's the same movement that we're seeing on both sides here. People are fed up. They want someone who's genuine. It's like the kids were saying from Liberty University. They believe that Bernie Sanders has the convictions of his beliefs and is talking about things that he's believed in and put his, person the same way that Dr. Carson has. When you listen to him, you believe him, even if you don't agree with him. And that's what people are really hungry for.
All right, David.
In short, Bill, Bernie Sanders is going nowhere. It's the anti-Hillary vote, or maybe it's we don't have another choice. When you look at the Democrat bench, you've got Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders, and maybe if he enters the race, Joe Biden, who's probably the stronger campaigner of the two. Bernie Sanders, his campaign basically will go nowhere. Centrist Democrats, American Democrats will not accept socialism at the Bernie model because it frankly doesn't work, and there are too many examples, Greece being the latest, of why cradle-to-grave entitlements do not work for a simple reason. When you confiscate the wealth of those who create wealth in society, how do you refill those coffers? It doesn't happen.
Okay.
But look, I mean, look what happened with the Labour Party leadership in England right now.
Yeah,
I mean,
good point. We can debate that another time. But you got 15,000 people at a rally last month in Portland, Oregon. I mean, the people who go to his rallies want to hear his message.
Yes, they do.
And he's giving it to them. Thank you, David. Thank you, Jessica. We'll talk again. Appreciate your time.